All right, we'd now like to welcome on two very special guests, someone we've been eyeing for a long time to have come talk to us. We have two ladies from the SAC Source to Sea, Alyssa Winkelman and Ari Kosel. Did I say that right, Ari?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, so you two just completed one of the most magnificent journeys in Northern California. You did the entire Sacramento River for approximately, 300, 400 miles?
Yeah, it was over 400 miles.
From Mount Shasta to the San Francisco Bay. Absolutely extraordinary. And we've been following you for a long time. So I'm curious, how was this journey sort of born? Like, who came up with the idea and what was it like until you actually began on March 14th?
So I came up with the idea. I think it was kind of just like a distant idea in my head for a couple years. And then this last fall, I started thinking about it more seriously and asked Ari if she was interested in doing this. And she was like totally in. And so that was in October. And basically from October until we launched, we just were kind of figuring out what our game plan was going to be. And initially we're like, let's just go on a rafting adventure, boating adventure, but then realized there were so many issues going on with the SAC that would be really cool to highlight. And we felt like there was more of a mission there for us. We both grew up on the Upper Sac, we both did our first river guide training there, and it's really special to us. So it felt like, hey, we could, broaden our scope of knowledge about the SAC and hopefully educate the public a little bit. So that's where the idea for a film came about. So we found Jamie Trapp, our filmmaker from Alaska, and just kind of it got going from there. It really became kind of almost like a full-time job for a little while, the whole planning process and getting sponsors and reaching out to stakeholders and just getting everything organized.
So, and I'd love to talk about the documentary and sort of, how that's going and what we can expect. But I'm wondering, how are you guys uniquely qualified to make this trek? And has anyone done it before you?
Yeah, so there have been several groups or solo adventurers who have done source to sea or source to sea variations on the Sacramento, either starting somewhere near Box Canyon Dam or below Shasta Dam. But I think we're one of the first groups to try and go from a really high point of Cliff Lake, which is, one of the true sources of the SAC. And I think another thing that made us unique was, as far as we know, we're like the only all-female crew to have completed a source to sea on the SAC. And I think we all brought something a little bit unique to the table. Like Alyssa said, we both grew up here on the Upper Sac and did our guide training and just our river lovers and river women. But then, finding Jamie, who she likes to say filled the unique niche role of filmmaker, woman, and pack rafter / sea kayaker. We felt pretty lucky to find someone who filled those qualifications. And Alyssa's a Sufferfest queen. I'm pretty chill, mellow. Jamie's just a big goober. So that also makes us unique, I guess.
So you say Sufferfest, you're like you like to go on long trail runs and stuff?
Yeah. I like long trail runs, but I like things where you're more in like a type 2 fun state of mind for the majority of it, or at least portions of it. And I kind of anticipated this trip being somewhere in the type 1.5, type 2 fun range, and it was. So yeah, I like things that are hard to do and, feel like super accomplished afterwards.
So you mentioned you guys started sort of high up and you skied down, right? You skied down to, I guess, Lake Siskiyou, and then you went around the dam, and then you obviously, I mean, you did a million things. You pack rafted, then you got actual kayaks and kayaked out to sea. Did you have someone sort of following you along and helping you like move all this stuff around, all these different obstacles that you guys had throughout the journey?
Well, we had a ton of support from the start to finish, but in terms of the actual trip, once we were on the water post our ski, we did all the portages ourselves. So Shasta Dam, Keswick, and then the diversion dam in Redding. Part of the reason we chose pack rafts was that they're super packable and lightweight. So we wouldn't need, a vehicle to help us get around any of those things. And we wanted to be as self-sufficient as possible, but on a big journey like that, you need your community. So we had friends and family do a couple resupplies for us for food. But other than that, we were out there in the middle of the state on our own.
Yeah. And we were really lucky that Kathy, who runs Delta Kayak Adventures, she met us in Knight's Landing and brought the sea kayaks to us. Did that transition and was like incredible support, like so generous, loaning us those boats for that portion of our trip. So yeah, like Alyssa said, lots of support.
Yeah, there's so many people that call the Sacramento River home, and it's uniquely personal to me. I mean, I grew up on the river in Redding, and my dad actually wrote a book on the Sacramento River when I was young. So I have a ton of experiences there. Now we're actually located in Sacramento, and I still drive past the Sacramento River. And I always think, it snowed on Mount Shasta 50 years ago, and then that pops out of the ground and goes into all these different lakes and rivers all the way to the ocean. And it really is a connective experience for the entire region, the entire state, So I sort of love how it just connects everyone. I'm guessing that this journey was sort of a personal bucket list for you, but what else did you want to accomplish with this trip and with this documentary?
Well, like I mentioned before, there's so many issues going on in the SAC with water and water allotment and different projects that are going on, like the Delta tunnels. And a lot of people in the state don't know about most of those issues. The issues range from enough water for salmon, water quality, having enough water for farmers and the whole ag industry. And then, there's a lot of endangered species on the Sacramento River. So we just really wanted to highlight some of those things. And we are still in the process of connecting with stakeholders, but along the journey, our mission was to connect with as many folks as we could and do interviews while we were out there and have that sense of place, we're in their home and we're able to see what issues they're experiencing firsthand. And so that felt really important, and we learned a ton, and we're still learning a ton. And so really hoping that we can share everything that we learned and all the experiences we had with these folks, and just pass it along to the public and make people more aware, in a state where water is kind of the biggest issue at hand. A lot of people don't even know about it. So hoping we can just reach more folks.
And I think another thing that kind of made us unique, because there have been different documentaries done on the SAC and some of the issues surrounding water and social and environmental issues, but we really were trying to keep a pretty open mind and not necessarily take a particular stance or have an agenda that we were pushing. Our main goal was just to learn and listen, and then use our ability to float and collect stories as a means of, like Alyssa said, just sharing that information with the public and elevating these voices so that then people can kind of make decisions for themselves or get excited and curious and dig deeper into issues that really spoke to them and resonated. But our goal was really just to try and give equal opportunity or an equal voice to everyone that we could connect with.
So I'm curious because the information we collect on all these issues is through a lot of different resources, and you build your opinions based on that. I'm curious, did your experiences in talking to these people along the way, did it change your perception on these issues, or did it reaffirm your original thoughts about the water issues along the Sacramento River?
I would say for me personally, I definitely have some strong opinions about some of the issues going on all rivers. But again, like, we wanted to come into this with open minds. And so I definitely tried to set aside those biases. But I think a lot of what we learned did reaffirm some of the biases that I personally had. And I don't think that that's something that we're going to necessarily share. We're going to continue with our story in the film of like, these are the issues and make your own decision. But I think for me personally, it reaffirmed some of the things that I was thinking. And then I learned about new things that I didn't even know were issues. And now I feel pretty strongly about those things. So I think it's hard to have an experience like that and not form opinions,
right?
Even if you're trying to be open-minded.
Yeah. I would echo what Alyssa said and just add that I think it was such a good learning experience in terms of recognizing that, everybody has a reason for believing what they believe, and you might not necessarily agree with it, but it's important to at least hear and understand where they're coming from. And one thing that I found really amazing and remarkable was that a lot of the stakeholders were actively doing that for each other. Like they're coming from their lived experience and their understanding of the issue, and yet would often highlight, maybe someone or an opinion that's on the other side from them and acknowledge it. And I thought that was pretty incredible that there was this mutual understanding of like, we're not on the same page, but we ultimately all love the Sacramento River and care about the river and value it. So there was that common theme throughout.
Yeah, the river's got so many different uses for so many different people in the state, right? I always remember when I got a couple speeding tickets when I was younger, and I went to driving school, and the instructor said, well, everyone on the road has a different agenda, and that's why everyone's sort of crossing with each other and cutting each other off. And I think about the SAC in the same way, right? We talk to people who are in the recreation business on Shasta Lake, and they're like, yeah, raise the dam, like that just helps us. But then you look at all the other things it impacts, and so there's just so many different perspectives on this stuff. And as we're learning now, building these dams has like a huge impact on years from now, right? 50 years from now, 100 years from now. So we're continuing to learn this stuff, and I appreciate what you guys are doing, sort of bringing it to light. So your trek, I want to hear about specifically what it's like, because there's all these different sections of the river and different ecosystems. So give me a general overview of your trip, source to sea.
So the source or one of the sources. So the source is kind of, it's made up of a few different, springs and creeks and lakes that all run into the South Fork of the Sacramento River. That's kind of the term that most people use in the area. And the source that we started at was Cliff Lake, which is, I think like 6,500 feet. And when we went up there, we snowmobiled up there. It was still quite snowy, and it was actually snowing that day as well. And so we started in kind of a subalpine setting, lots of evergreen, and everything else was still hibernating for winter. So not a lot of plant life that we're seeing. And then once we got down onto the Sac below Box Canyon Dam and down in the Sims area, stuff started to look a little spring-like. It was actually like the morning we left, it had snowed a foot overnight, and we were in Mount Shasta. And once we got down on the river, it was like spring and it was lovely. So yeah, once we got down there, the environment had changed a little bit. The ecosystem was, it's still alpine-ish, but we've got more oak and
like willow, alder.
Yeah, so it starts to change a little bit more
dogwood.
Yeah, and stuff wasn't really blooming yet, so it's still winter.
Right. Late March, yeah.
Yeah. But then once we got down below Shasta Dam and into the Redding area, lots of live oaks and sycamore and cypress, cottonwood. And the water quality was still pretty good at that point.
But then we did have some rain, only really like 2 days of rain on the whole trip, right around when we were passing through Redding. And that immediately did change the water quality because many of the creeks that were flowing into the Sac were then increasing, silt and runoff. And so the water became more turbid, which, one of the things that was highlighted a lot through different stakeholders was just like how important the turbid water really is, especially for steelhead who are moving either up or downstream.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then, once we got down further into the valley, we were in a lot of agricultural land, farmland, and we really started getting, there are levees at that point once you get down south of Colusa. And so really from the river, it's kind of hard to see much going on. And there was actually one day where I was like, I got to get out of my boat and get on top of the levee because I don't know where I am. This is weird. And in addition to that, you lose a lot of the riparian habitat once the levees are built. And so, it's really just like walled in and it feels very channelized and like a canal in some places. But despite that, there was still a lot of wildlife, which was really surprising. Like, I think I saw more types of birds on that river than I have on any river. And we saw beavers and otters. And so the wildlife was really pretty rich still, despite the lack of plant life.
Right.
And then we got to below the confluence of the Feather River coming in, just above Sac. That's where we saw our first sea lion that was working its way up here. So we encountered a few sea lions, and we floated through downtown Sacramento, which was quite an interesting experience to just be paddling next to, I think we hit it on a Saturday, so a lot of people were out enjoying the spring weather and their boats and partying and having a great time. It can
get pretty crowded right there under the bridge.
Yeah. We had some near misses with big boats. And at that point too, that was kind of when we really first started feeling the effects of the tidal influence coming in from the Delta and the Bay. And so that's when, fortunately, we had switched to sea kayaks in Knight's Landing, and we're a little bit more streamlined and efficient in our paddling. But our days became much more dependent on timing and trying to sync up with the ebb flow heading out, so that we weren't fighting the incoming tide. And once we got through the Delta and reached below like Sassoon Marsh, that's when we were encountering big freight ships and passing under huge landmarks like the Carquinez Bridge and the Richmond Bridge, and getting more into the bay and feeling a little bit more on the open water. Definitely had a few moments where the tide switched and we weren't quite where we wanted to be, and really felt the effects of that. So
I think it was 2 podcasts ago. We were talking about your guys' journey, and I was like, I cannot believe they kayaked through the bay like that. And I didn't know you guys had switched kayaks, so I thought you were on pack rafts. But I've actually sailed that bay quite a bit, and it is treacherous sometimes. And with all the ships and everything, was that a scary experience?
Yeah, I would say probably some of the most like terrifying moments of my life now up to this point, because I'm not a sea kayaker. And so that was like definitely out of my comfort zone, which I appreciate now. In the moment, I was panicked half the time. But it was interesting for sure, because the tidal aspect didn't feel too nerve-wracking, but if it was really windy, if you got a huge gust, there could be, wind high, like creating waves that could tip you over for sure. And then just big yachts don't really slow down. So you get a ton of wake from them. And then going around some points, it gets really choppy. So that all was pretty intimidating. For sure.
I think that's where, again, the community support came in really clutch. And again, Kathy gave us like tide charts and alternate routes that we could do, just banking on her incredible knowledge of the bay and of sea kayaking there. Jamie has more experience with sea kayaking, so she was kind of like the grounding rock for Alyssa and I, who definitely were more outside of our comfort zone. And so her experience with even, being able to communicate with other boats via walkie-talkies or radios was really important. And just her calming presence, I think, helped us out at moments. But it was definitely a new experience for both Alyssa and I, because like we said, we're river people, but not necessarily sea kayak people. But it was great being in the bay. We saw like some whales and some porpoises and totally different wildlife, more marine wildlife. So that was really exciting.
Yeah, right in the middle of whale migration season. I'm guessing you just hugged the north side of the bay and went like around Angel Island, right?
Yeah. So once we got past Benicia and through the Carquinez Strait, we stayed on the south shore for a while until Point Penal, and we camped in that area. And then from Point Penal, we kind of hugged the south shore of San Pablo Bay. And then going under the Richmond Bridge is when we crossed over towards Angel Island. And then we actually camped on Angel Island. Don't tell the Park Service. I think it was fine what we did. I think you actually can camp there.
I've done it before. You absolutely can. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. And then from Angel Island to the Golden Gate was pretty quick, but
yeah, we tried to minimize our open water crossings as best as possible, just so that we were not in our freak out zone for very long.
Right.
But we did have really great weather going through the Carquinez Strait. Actually, there was a lot of folks had warned us, oh, that's super treacherous, but we had almost like glass that day. It was really amazing. And that was probably the best day in the bay, just in terms of weather and wind. But that was actually the day where we like almost got the tide timing right. I think it seems like we could paddle like 25 miles with the ebb tide, but then once it switched, we had like 3 miles to go, and we just I think we spent 45 minutes in the same place paddling as hard as we could. And we're like, we're not moving. And then got to shore and just waited the tide out for a couple hours, and then made it to our campsite. But that was, I think, the main day where we didn't get the tide quite right.
The tides keep you humble for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The ocean, it's a powerful beast, isn't it? Was that your hardest day on the trip?
That was our longest day for sure.
Well, what was your most difficult obstacle throughout this entire journey?
Oh,
The look on your faces, it was all hard, I'm guessing.
I don't know. I think for me, I think it was just the long stretches of flat water, especially before switching into sea kayaks where, we just weren't as efficient. But yeah, I think just like the monotony of a long stretch of flat water, the saving grace would be when we'd have a connection with a stakeholder or an interview set up, because that, I think, grounded us and reminded us of like, this is why we're out here. But otherwise, if it's just like a hot day, because, it was getting warm, 70, 80 degrees, and you're just like paddling these long stretches, it could be a little bit like, oh, what are we doing again? What?
Yeah, I think like from Calusa to the Delta were some of the hardest days for sure, just because there's very little current. And so it really was just like flat water for 25 to 30 miles some of those days. I think actually the hardest day, now I'm remembering, was from, we stayed at the Sacramento Yacht Club. We like made friends and so we stayed there, and then from there to or near Walnut Grove. That was probably the hardest day for sure.
Yeah.
We were all pretty tired and hadn't had a rest day yet. And
that was a 30-mile day.
Yeah.
All flat water, and starting to feel the effects of the tide too.
What was your favorite part of the trip?
I really liked our like afternoon and evening on Angel Island. That like stands out as one of my favorite just like days, I think. And I think it made it even better because going from Point Penal to Angel Island, I was like the most terrified of the whole trip I'd been, because it was really choppy and there were boats that seemed like they didn't see us. And getting into Raccoon Strait was really terrifying for me. So I think that afternoon was just amazing and we had great weather.
Yeah, that day definitely stands out. I think overall, just the connections that we made were phenomenal, especially, coming out a year of COVID and having the experience and the privilege to be able to like essentially travel and have those spontaneous connections come up where people were just overwhelmingly kind, generous, went out of their way to connect with us and support us and share their knowledge and passion and experience with the SAC. And I think that was soul filling for me for sure. And I think for the whole group of just feeling so connected again in a way that I think we had missed and had been craving. And we hope that we were able to share some of that via our social media and just the stories that we were sharing.
Yeah, you guys have done a great job with your social. I enjoy following it.
Cool, thanks. I think just the amount of people that wanted to be part of what we were doing and support us was really, I think at first a little like, whoa, this is cool. Everybody's so interested. Like, and we were on Channel 7 News when we went through Redding. And after that, we had a lot of people emailing us like, oh, I live here. If you guys want to like camp at my house, or, I have a couple extra bedrooms. And so we actually stayed with a woman in Red Bluff that lived on the river and offered us laundry. And she said she was going to take us to dinner, and she had showers. Showers and 3 extra rooms because all her kids were raised. And and fortunately it rained really hard that night, so we were super grateful to be warm and inside
and dry.
It was just like everybody was so welcoming. It still feels like a dream kind of.
It's such an interesting journey because you're almost like through hikers on like the PCT. Didn't you call yourself like through paddlers or through kayakers?
Yeah, totally. And we definitely experienced, on through hiking with the PCT or the AT, there's like trail magic where people will come and meet you on the trail and deliver resupplies or goodies or just help you out in some way. And we definitely felt a lot of river magic where, you know, friends or total strangers would just leave us little goodies or come meet us and deliver pizza, or, you know, all these amazing examples of just genuine kindness. And yeah, we were so grateful.
Well, I think everyone's truly appreciative of you just educating and bringing to light the issues of the river. And like I said, it connects us all, even as like it's a shit show going through Sacramento, but it still means a lot to people in Sacramento, right? And like you stopped at Scotty's Landing. Like I love Scotty's. I went to school in Chico. So there's so many ways that it connects everyone in Northern California, that I think that's why it was like so personal to everyone.
Yeah, agreed. That felt really cool to experience too, because being at the source, growing up at the source, I think for me anyway, it felt like a little bit of a disconnect from what the rest of the state experiences with the river. And I feel super privileged to live here because we have like the water comes from, you know, all the water in the state comes from here, or for the northern part of the state comes from here, and it's super clear, and the river is like crystal clear and cold. So swimming in it, you feel like super refreshed and great. And as you get further down, that's not the same experience for everyone. And so, but everybody still loves it. So that was really special to see. Like, I feel super privileged, but all these other people do too, because it's such a great river.
Yeah, we asked a lot of people along the way, just like, what does the Sac mean to them? And it was incredible what a broad spectrum of emotions and feelings that came up. But I think the overwhelming takeaway was just like how much the Sac really means to people. Like it touches people. It's like you said, it's a connecting force, this, you know, fluid movement that brings us all together. So that was really cool to experience.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned, like, because you guys grew up on the Upper Sac, and you had a lot of experience on the Upper Sac, right? Rafting it.
Yeah.
That is the only stretch where it's like that in the entire way. And quite frankly, any communities it goes through are super small, and it goes through a lot of communities that are much bigger where it's just slow and large. So your experience with it throughout your life is rather unique compared to the rest of people. So that's super interesting. I don't want to spoil the documentary, but if you think there's one issue on the Sacramento River moving in the next 10, 20, 50 years, what do you think it is?
Ooh. I mean, this might be vague, but I also think it's just so true. It's just like, you know, the amount of water and how it gets distributed. I think that's the biggest issue that is kind of houses all the other sub issues. You know, there's just a limited supply of water and a lot of people and projects and species relying on it. And so how do we distribute it in a way that meets the needs as equitably as possible, because there's not enough to go around.
Agreed. That's a great way to put it. So what's next? When is the documentary out? How long are you guys working on it? I know these processes take a long time.
Yeah, so Jamie has started working on it, and she is hoping to have like a rough cut in the next couple months, and then we'll just kind of keep fine tuning it. I think our ideal would be to have it by this fall, but you know, life happens and it gets busy. We all have jobs. So that's our goal. And then we're hoping in the next few months to have time to produce a podcast as well, because some of the interviews that we had were so long and meaningful and informative that it's not going to all make it into the film. And so we really want to be sure to highlight those interviews as well and go a little deeper on some of the issues, because the film will be more of like kind of narrowing in on some themes and then talking about all the issues, but it'll be a little more broad. And so through the podcast, we hope to dig deeper on some of those issues and really help inform the public. And then we're also shifting our website from what it was before, which was kind of like, here's a trip we're doing, an adventure we're doing, to now more of a informative resource for people to go and see, like, oh, this is this person they talk to, and this is a resource that I could find out more information about this subject, and just kind of dig a little deeper so that we have 3 different platforms for people to experience our trip different ways, like visually, auditory, or reading. So yeah, that's kind of what's next.
That's great. I love the idea of a podcast, because when you talk about the Sacramento River, it really branches off into a million different topics, right? I mean, it's never ending. All the tributaries that flow into it. I mean, talk about, you're connecting now exponentially more communities, when you, like the American River comes into it, and the Feather and the McLeod and so on and so forth. So I think that would be awesome. How can people follow you guys? How can people donate to you? How can our audience help you out?
Great questions. Yeah, we have a couple of ways to connect with us. We have a website, which is sacsourcetosea.com. And then our Instagram handle is sacsourcetosea, but with the number 2 instead of written out TO. The website is TO. And then on our website, there is a link to donate to our GoFundMe campaign. And we are still fundraising, because an aspect of our trip that we wanted to honor was just like the woman empowerment portion of 3 women doing this adventure together. And so we are ambassadors for the Cairn Project, spelled CAIRN. And they're an amazing nonprofit group that does a lot to increase access to the outdoors, especially for young women. But for women in general. And so our goal is to continue fundraising as ambassadors for the Cairn Project, so that any of the additional funds that don't go towards the film or post-production will be put towards, increasing access to the outdoors for women and young women, especially more locally and focused on water sports.
Amazing. Everyone go follow them and donate, because I know, these things, there's a lot of costs associated and a lot of time that you have to put into these types of things. And these sort of resources, I think, are really important for our region and all the different communities of Northern California. So follow them. We'll put the links to your donations and your website and Instagram in the link of this podcast. Ari, Alyssa, thank you so much for joining us today. You guys are amazing. We're really big fans. And once the documentary gets rolling and maybe you're getting ready to release, we'll have you back on and we can talk about it some more, okay?
Yeah,
that'd be amazing.
That'd be awesome. And we do plan on doing a little film tour with the film in some of the communities that we stopped. And so once that gets closer, we'll be happy to share that information as well.
Yeah.
Yes. We'll have a release tour. Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you guys so much. It was great meeting you.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks for having us. This has been awesome.